What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York, and on the phone we got Evan from Wilderun. Thank you so much for your time today, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. So, first thing is always first, Veil of Imagination was definitely a record that was favored by many in 2019. I really want to know, what the thought process was going into this. Was there kind of like a preconceived idea of what you were revolving this album around? Was there a lot of improvising involved? Just how was the making of Veil of Imagination?
Well, it definitely was, coming on the backs of our previous two records. We've been a band since about 2012, and it's kind of just honestly a natural progression and expansion of our sound so far, I think. We started off as more of a straightforward folk metal band, symphonic metal band, and I think just over the course of these three records, we've just wanted to sort of expand our composition style a bit. Just we like to make epic, dramatic sounding music and dynamic sounding music. That's always just been inherently important to us. Don't really know why, but it's just kind of our tastes. But I think on this record, we kept that. Definitely has always been an element of the band, but we just wanted to kind of branch out even more with that. Like, we wanted the heavy parts to be heavier, the quiet parts to be quieter, and maybe be a little less worried about the type of subgenre that we were falling into. So, I think it's a culmination of a lot of those things, but we've said this before, but it definitely feels like the most natural record we've done, like the least worried about the genre or exactly how it was going to come out. So I think that was working well for us.
Yeah, that was interesting because I noticed that there was a progression on here. I thought Sleep at the Edge of the Earth and Olden Tales and Deathly Trails were really cool. I almost thought that this was kind of like a big step forward in a way. Did you go in knowing this is what we wanted it to sound like?
I'd say a little bit yes and a little bit no. I mean, there's always going to be some sort of element of surprise in whatever the end product is. I definitely knew going in that I wanted it to expand further, just compositionally. I definitely knew that, and so when I was working on the songwriting and everything, I definitely had that in mind. Whereas on Sleep at the Edge of the Earth, we were still trying to progress in a lot of ways on that record, but I always had this thing in the back of my head that was still make sure it has that folky kind of sound to it, and let's always make sure it comes back to that, even if it goes off on tangents. And I just didn't have that in my head this time. If the song went off on a tangent, it wasn't let's make sure that it always comes back. It was just kind of let's just see where it goes more naturally and more kind of just, I don't know, let it run wild sometimes a little bit more than we've done before. So yeah, I think it just kind of came down to being almost less attached to whatever the final product was going to be, letting it unfold. And I think that was also applied during the orchestration process, because we got a little weirder with some of our textures, and I don't know, I guess it's just the result of being around for a few years and making enough music to where you start to just get a little more confident, I guess, and just trying new things and being a little less afraid of fitting into a box.
Yeah, it was Veil of Imagination almost kind of like a concept album, because the reason why I asked that is because of how well each song led into another. Just going from the unimaginable Zero Summer to O Resolution to Sleeping Ambassadors, it all flowed so well. Do you feel maybe this record is meant to be listened to in order? This isn't the type of album to listen to on shuffle?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and like I said before, I feel that's, in a certain sense, that's kind of how we've always thought about music, especially the last two records. So it's not necessarily there was some big concept at the beginning, and then I was okay, how do I write music to make this concept come to life? It was more just all the songs were written in pieces. There was a lot of different ideas floating around for a couple of years, and the conceptual feel of it and the natural flow really comes from just meticulously putting things together the right way. And like, you know, so I didn't necessarily write one song knowing while I was writing it that it was going to come after another song, but it was more that there were two songs previously written, making sure that they flow well and feel good on their own, but then maybe adjusting the end of one and then adjusting the beginning of one, and so they start to mold together, like figuring out creative ways to glue things. And then just beyond that, just the general pacing of the record. But so even though it wasn't written as like one giant block, one giant concept, there was a general mentality and a feeling that I think was present throughout all the songwriting. So I feel like that helped to glue things together.
Yeah. Is there ever a time where lyrics can determine the outcome of the music itself, or does music need to be laid down before you guys come up with like a story or a subject matter?
So far, we have, well, I would say that for Veil of Imagination and Sleep at the Edge of the Earth, it's definitely just been music first. That's just kind of how we've always done things. Olden Tales was a little bit of a weird album because we actually used some traditional melodies in there, and that whole record was a bit of a different concept altogether. But for what Wilderun is right now, and what it's been for a few years, it's definitely been music first, and then when I'm writing lyrics, I just try to just listen to what the music is kind of telling me, I guess. Just kind of let the music create a feeling, and then see how that culminates in my head as far as what I want to talk about, and then mixing that in with something I might already have been wanting to talk about, but hopefully the music can spark, an inspiration in how I flesh that out. But we've, besides some of that first record stuff, I've never had like a big lyrical concept in mind and then written music from it. Although I'm open to it. Maybe that could be a future record, but we haven't done that so far.
Do you like lyrics to be open to interpretation, or do you try to maybe engage the listener into what the subject matter can be about?
I mean, personally, just as a listener, I like both. I think both ways can be done well and both ways can be done poorly. But as a lyric writer, I like some room for interpretation, just because I feel like, especially with with Veil of Imagination, the things I'm writing about are so kind of esoteric and like kind of just a little. It's like when I'm writing it, I'm even having a little bit of a hard time understanding what I'm trying to write about, like, because I'm mostly just writing about my own head and anxieties and neurosis, and just kind of just trying to interpret how my brain works, which is already like a strange thing. So I kind of figure if I'm having a hard time interpreting my own brain, I'm not going to try to write it in a way where it's like a clear answer for the audience, because that would be almost dishonest. I don't have a clear answer for anything I'm writing about. I'm just exploring thoughts and ideas and just kind of trying to piece together answers myself. So I think that's how I want to present it to people, is just, these are just explorations, and maybe you can get something out of it.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to like the art of making music, being a prolific artist yourself, 3 albums with Wilderun and also your time with Replicire, is there like maybe a different mind frame depending on what project you're working with at like that particular time? Like, is what you've done in the previous Wilderun albums a different mindset than what Veil of Imagination was, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely between bands, there's a big divide. Wilderun has, that's part of the reason also why I decided eventually to just devote my time only to Wilderun, is because I've always had it be more of a personal thing. The first record is still kind of a weird anomaly, and I think that was the mindset between Olden Tales and Deathly Trails and the last 2 records is definitely different. And I just think that was a matter of going into the band and into that record with one idea, and then once we did it, we were like, that's cool. That was fun, but I can't imagine doing a full band, like having an entire career and only getting stuck in this niche. So that's why we decided to kind of let's open up, let's get a little bit more out there. But yeah, as far as my mindset goes, yeah, it's been different for different projects and different albums. Although I'd like to think that thus far Wilderun has had, especially with the last two records, has had a little bit of a similar feeling throughout it.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I was also really interested and excited about is that you guys got signed to Century Media. And Century Media has really been kind of like I've said right now, a label that's really been promoting a lot of underground and aggressive music. Like, you know, signing you guys is awesome, but, you know, they also have Vitriol and Hideous Divinity and, like, a lot of, you know, long-running death metal bands like Aborted or Heaven Shall Burn. I mean, it seemed like Century Media was definitely the perfect label to, you know, take the Wilderun even further, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely felt right, I would say. Like, I mean, we were talking to a couple different labels, and but we I mean, among a couple different reasons, one of the main reasons I think we decided to go with Century Media ultimately was just because the guys that we were talking to there felt like really excited about the music. Not that other people we were talking to didn't show some enthusiasm, but the guys at Century Media, Mike Gitter and the head Philip, both were like, you could just tell that they had really listened to the music and really digested it, and they weren't just kind of looking at some social media numbers and thinking it was something to ride on. Like, you could tell that they had some sort of creative investment in it, and that was really important to us, because one of our main fears has always been, you know, this isn't going to be worth it if we ever are in the middle of an album process and we feel like there's something having to be sacrificed, because that's, you know, if that's happening, then what's the point of all this, you know? And luckily we really have gotten the feeling from Century Media like they care. They kind of, you know, believe in us and believe that whatever if we stick to our creativity and our freedom in that regard, that's going to be best for everyone. So yeah, it's only been the beginning. I can't say too much because it's only been a couple months, but thus far it seems very promising. Yeah,
when it comes to like the newer bands that they sign on their roster, like I feel like you guys, Lorna Shore and Imperial Triumphant, like you three are like kind of like, and maybe Vitriol as well, are kind of like flying the flag right now of the modern day aggressive music on their roster.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And those are some really cool bands to be going alongside with.
Yeah. Another thing I was kind of curious about is because I consider Wilderun to almost, and sorry if this is not really what you like to be labeled as, but I almost consider you guys like fairly experimental because you incorporate so many different albums. Like, I mean, just the two songs, Scentless Core, Budding and Fading, like they had totally different vibes and emotions behind them, and there's orchestral elements and technical elements and stuff. So is it maybe like easier to sort of try new things because you incorporate so many different sounds in your style?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely take no offense to the term experimental. I mean, it's kind of one of those weird, vague terms that I never have. Like, sometimes I'll even want to call us experimental, but then I get worried that some people will be like, no, man, that's not what you guys are. You guys are progressive. And I'm like, what's actually the difference? But anyways, I would say that we, regardless of genre tags, we like to experiment. Like I was saying before, we want to experiment and try new ideas and not get bored and try to just play with things that we haven't before, and I think that as we go on, we're hopefully going to do that more, just as a way to keep things interesting and hopefully combine things in a way that maybe can make something new, you know, create a certain vibe, atmosphere that you don't hear too often, and tells a story in a way that continues to be captivating. So yeah, I would say that we, regardless of the tag, we definitely want to continue to be experimental in the way that we create music, at least as best as we can.
Yeah, I do got to say that amongst my prog and melodic death metal fans, there was definitely like a lot of I don't want to say arguing, but like a lot of debate on where on the periodic table of subgenres you guys belong on. They're prog, they're melodic death, they're folk, they're this. They sound like Opeth, they sound like Neobliviscaris, they sound like, you know, Obscura. Like, I mean, I think in the end it sounds like Wilderun.
Cool. Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, we definitely have a bunch of different influences, and it's, you know, it's impossible to deny all the different influences that we have, and we don't want to like shy away from that. But we also want to do our best to take those influences and combine them in different ways and try to make something new if we can. And that's good to hear that you can hear like a sound, because I actually find sometimes that, you know, being in the band, sometimes, you know, I'm so deep in it, my head, you know, obviously my perspective of the band is going to be totally different than anyone else, is that I sometimes worry, I'm like, is there a sound? Like, do we have a sound and a feeling that people get? And sometimes I'm like, I have a feeling, but I'm not sometimes quite sure what other people feel. So anyways, it's good to hear that you hear that. So it's good to hear.
Do you almost kind of like look for inspiration? Like, do you kind of like go, is there like research involved in making a music, or do ideas and inspiration just come out of the blue?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of it's out of the blue for sure. I mean, a lot of it, you know, it's anything creative, it's always a little bit hard to know where it came from. Like, you never know. Like, I mean, there's some things that you can draw a little bit direct of a line to where you think you might have gotten that idea, but then other things, you don't really know where it came from, and it could have been just some random thing years ago that you can't remember where the spark actually came from. But I'd say I'm always trying to listen to different music. Like, I listen to, you know, bands from a bunch of different genres. I mean, I personally, like, I probably less than half of the music I listen to is probably actually heavy metal music anymore. And some people get upset with me saying that, but it's not that I still love metal, and it's definitely my roots. But I'm always just interested in a bunch of different things, and you know, just a bunch of indie music and electronic music and just whatever, just, you know, just kind of running the gamut. And even though that kind of music doesn't necessarily make its way into Wilderun, like, I don't think we're going to anytime soon start incorporating, like, just out of the blue a bunch of different shit, because we want to make sure that we have a sound that we don't lose. But I think listening to a bunch of different things just helps my mindset and the way that I think about things shift a little bit, so I don't get stale. So I would say that's probably just listening to a bunch of random music is the way that I kind of try to keep my mind fresh.
Yeah. Do you have a background in theory at all? Because, like, I was really impressed with the usages of keyboards and melodies, and they really sounded very classically influenced.
Yeah, I do. We all went to Berklee College of Music. That's where Wilderun all met. So we're all, you know, music nerds. And I studied some composition there, which it definitely involves some theory. So I have a bit of a background. I would say that, though, like, it's one of those things where I had a couple of years where I was, you know, taking theory classes and studying that, and but then I kind of, honestly, when Wilderun really started a few years after that, it's not like I deeply consider theory when I'm writing music. Like, I'm kind of just still going by intuition and just kind of going by what I like just what I like to hear. But I'm sure that it's subconsciously at this point helped me piece things together a little bit. Although it also can be a bit of a trap. I've noticed sometimes if I get too theoretical in my thinking, I can start to put boxes around the way I'm thinking about things a little too much. So it's a little bit of a give and take situation.
Yeah, I was having that discussion with Tardia, and she was telling me, like, it's cool to have a classical background. You know, theory definitely helps and it influences you, but it could sometimes be too dictating as well.
Absolutely. You gotta, I think it's good to learn, but you gotta also learn how to put it aside. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not like when you're writing stuff, you're like, okay, I'm working off of this scale and Phrygian minor and all that. That's like not even in the thought process in songwriting.
Not really. Yeah, no. Like, I mean, sometimes I can take a step back and realize that, like, oh, like, yeah, this was a, this is a Mixolydian scale or whatever, and but like, when I'm in it, when I'm like trying to write something I like and get excited about it, like, no, not really. I'm just trying to get excited about it,
Mm-hmm. I have a couple more questions for you, but kind of going back into having so many elements in Wilderun, when it comes to playing it live, like, how do you execute that in a way? Is playing live maybe almost kind of like a different mindset than songwriting in a way? And like, are you trying to maybe execute the material exactly what people are hearing?
Yeah, it's definitely a different game. It's because I think that Wilderun is. I don't want to say we're a studio band because I feel like we do still put a lot of focus into our live show. But when we're thinking about making music, our first and most important goal is the record. We're just trying to figure out how are we going to make a record that we're really proud of, and basically we'll do that, and then later we'll figure out how to do it live. And so that's kind of just what we've done, and it's been a little bit of a challenge. I mean, we use a lot of backing tracks, because we're still a fairly small band, so unfortunately it's not quite in the budget yet to try to include more instruments. And it would be, I mean, we have dreams of one day trying to incorporate like a chamber ensemble on stage with us, or a couple of different folk musicians on stage with us, or something like that, just to bring the eclectic experience onto the stage. But up until now, and probably for the foreseeable future, it's still just been a normal metal band setup with backing tracks, and it's worked pretty well. I mean, it's a little technically complicated. We got to be playing along with the click track and all that, but so far it's worked decently well. As long as if the PA system in the room isn't set up well, it can sometimes be a little bit detrimental to our live sound. But yeah, we've rolled with the punches so far, and I think it's worked out okay.
Yeah, my friend sent me a video of you guys playing at 70K this year, and like it sounded phenomenal. So, and I knew what song you were playing and all that, so it didn't sound too out of the blue.
Cool, yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, luckily, yeah, that was probably one of the biggest stages we've played so far, and luckily the sound guy knew what he was doing, so that was good.
Yeah. You ready for the most difficult question of the entire interview?
I guess I have to be.
How do you know when a song is done?
Ooh, yeah, that is a hard one. You know what? I think this is a bit of a generic answer.
If you say that you're just going to abandon it, I'm going to hang up.
Well, it's kind of. I mean, that's kind of it. That's. I mean, honestly, it is a generic answer, and I know that so many people have said it, but like you kind of just have to accept when you kind of have to accept that you're almost never going to feel 100% complete with anything. Like, I've never walked away from a record or a song being like, just perfect. That's it. There's nothing more we could possibly do. It's always just like a matter of resources and honestly a little bit of a matter of sanity to just be like, okay, if we could keep going down, you can always go down the songwriting rabbit hole more, and the orchestrating rabbit hole, and the production rabbit hole. You can always go down that forever. But I think there is hitting a point of diminishing returns and a point of where you can start making choices that actually start to reverse some of the progress you've made. So it's just like a weird intuitive balance where you got to say, this is really cool. Maybe a couple parts could be better, but let's call it now because we don't want to risk messing it up later.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's like a hard thing to explain, but it's a little bit of intuition, I guess.
Well, because like your songs, especially on Veil of Imagination, really vary in length. Like the Unimaginable Zero Summer is like 14 and a half minutes, but then you have a song like Scentless Core, the first one, that's 3.5 minutes, and then the final track is like on 12 minutes. Like I'm like, do you know that it's going to be a long song upon starting it?
No, definitely not. That is it. The way that I write is definitely always just rolling with it as it comes. Like I write very linearly. Like I very much like start at the beginning and just kind of see where it goes. And I don't know, like sometimes a couple of the riffs just you play through them. I mean, I'll listen to them a bunch. I'll be working on one or two riffs for like a couple weeks or whatever, and then before I can figure out what's supposed to come after it. And then sometimes it'll be like, okay, actually this should repeat now, and then this is lending itself to a slightly more dense or slightly more small, compact structure just based on the riff or based on the melody. But then sometimes you get the opposite thing where you're working on the first two parts of the song, and then you realize, oh, this has to lead into something totally different now, and then that's gonna just start you on a path to add 8 minutes onto the song. And it kind of, I guess it's just like listening to, trying to, once again, coming back to a little bit of intuition, just trying to listen to what the parts are telling you, like what they want to happen next, like what feels like the natural progression of part to part, and if there's enough tension, if you need to hold the tension for a few more minutes, or if the tension's ready to be released quickly. So yeah, I don't know, it's different for every song and for every part.
I guess, fair enough. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else with Wilderun that you'd like to promote? Obviously, thanks to a certain virus that shall not be named, shows are right now not in the question really for 2020. But I'd imagine when 2021 comes, we'll be seeing quite a lot of you guys, right? With Veil of Imagination, everybody loving it, a new deal. We'd probably be seeing quite a lot of you, right?
Yeah, man, we're gonna try. I mean, we're basically just kind of waiting and seeing how everything's going to go right now, but we the first plan is to reschedule the tour that we were going to do in April. We were planning a 2-week tour with a Canadian band called Eternum.
Yep, I was going to go to that Brooklyn show.
Yeah, and it was definitely a huge bummer that we had to cancel that, but, so the first plan of attack will be to reschedule that. I don't know when that's going to be. It'd be great if it was the tail end of this year, but good chance it'll be maybe beginning of next year.
Well, Evan, great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Everybody, we are here with Evan of Wilderun. Be sure to check out Veil of Imagination if you haven't already. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.